Morning. Let's see where our titles. Reverend Dr. Wilbur C. Douglas III. And just want to say I want to first give honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, without whom this moment wouldn't even exist. With that said, I also want to offer my deepest gratitude to my alma mater here at Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. And before I do anything else, I'm going to need the clicker. Thank you so much. You know, I've encountered many seemingly impossible tasks and undertakings in my almost 44 years of ordained ministry, which includes 31 years in the military. But I have to say that summarizing my entire ministerial journey in just 15 minutes is going to be one of my greatest undertakings. Now, although I felt my initial calling in life was to be in the medical field, I did realize in my final year of school, of college, that all along God had been calling me to ordained ministry. And even after entering seminary here, I felt a tug for doing more than just pastoral ministry within a church setting. You know, the classes offered in my first 3 years here were instrumental in solidifying my desire to provide pastoral ministry in broader ways. And the late Dr. Neil Paler taught my most influential classes. Dr. Paler's pastoral care and counseling classes opened my eyes to the challenges of being a caring pastoral counselor while providing effective and compassionate support to troubled souls. His lessons took me far into my ministry years long after my graduation from here. And during my last year at the seminary, and after careful thought, long discussions, and deep prayer with God, I applied to be a Navy chaplain. And after a rather lengthy process, I was finally accepted and was commissioned on April 1st, 1981 as an ensign in the U.S. Navy Reserve. And I graduated from the seminary the following month. And after graduating, or attending and graduating the basic chaplain school at Newport, Rhode Island, I accepted the call to be the first ever associate minister at the Northeastern Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C. And while there, I affiliated with the local Navy Reserve Center in Washington, D.C., later in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, Dr. Paler's lessons and teachings helped me during my short time at Northeastern. And while at the church, I was able to implement the practical and the spiritual aspects of pastoral care and counseling. And my wife, Julie, who's sitting in the back there now, and after being married for 2 years, we left Washington, D.C. in 1984, so I could enter into full-time active duty with the U.S. Navy. My first duty assignment was as the battalion chaplain for the 2nd Tank Battalion, 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Before leaving D.C. for Camp Lejeune, I was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Now, serving with the young men and women of the U.S. Marine Corps, as we're always taught in chaplain school, the whole ministry is youth ministry. The average age in the Marine Corps is about 23. The average age in the Navy is about 22. So I learned so much during my time with them as I began my military career. The lessons learned from those who are always preparing to enter into harm's way could not be gained anywhere else. And while at Camp Lejeune, both of my sons, Charles and Robert, were born 15 months apart. Not much to do there. After 22 months at Camp Lejeune, I was called to Norfolk, Virginia, to serve as the squadron chaplain for Destroyer Squadron 26. And I went on my first deployment with my new command during the summer of 1986. We circumnavigated South America, working with the various navies and Marines of the South American countries. And upon returning, I was immediately transferred to Destroyer Squadron 32. And while we're there, I deployed to the Mediterranean Sea in the summer of '87. I met a lot of interesting people on that 6-month deployment. The most memorable was meeting Pope John Paul II. Now, I returned from my deployment to the Mediterranean Sea in time for my new orders to Naval Hospital Portsmouth in Portsmouth, Virginia. I was one of 3 Navy chaplains to be part of an intense 1-year Clinical Pastoral Education Program, or as we all lovingly know as CPE, from July 1988 to July of 1989. The hospital served as our base and as our laboratory. Each of us spent time in various units within the hospital: psychiatric wards, social services, renal dialysis. And one of my most impactful memories at the hospital was having to witness right at the table a full autopsy. And so many feelings were generated from that one unique experience. And due to our closeness with the patients we encountered, we conducted many counseling sessions in our offices and patients' rooms all over. And I remember writing 52 verbatims during my 4 units of CPE. I still have them. Now, my CPE training and my military experience, up to that point, they all came into play when my next set of orders sent my family and me to the Naval Hospital located on the naval base in Yokosuka, Japan. I was the sole chaplain for this major medical facility that served as the only full-time, full-service military hospital serving all of the branches of the U.S. military who were stationed in mainland Japan. It was at this hospital that my basic pastoral care and counseling courses, my CPE training, were all put to full use. Here I dealt with death and dying issues, as well as family systems dynamics, and all of this on a regular basis, as well as experiencing around-the-clock counseling, a load that I had in between patient visitations and my other pastoral and military obligations. My care and counseling was extended to patients, family members, hospital staff, and civilian and military members from the surrounding base units. Serving in an overseas duty station with my family generated many long and lasting friendships and memories. And during my tenure, I was promoted to the rank of lieutenant commander. After 3 years in Japan, I was given orders to return to the Naval Base Norfolk, Virginia in July of 1992, where I was assigned as the Deputy Director of the Chaplains Religious Enrichment Development Operation. Navy loves acronyms because it's known as CREDO. Say it for short. This was the Navy's only outreach ministry program. But there are CREDO centers all over the world, but Norfolk is the largest. As chaplains, we provided a retreat-based ministry and led various retreats for sea service personnel or Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, and as well as all of their family members. We conducted retreats for personal growth, spiritual growth, marriage enrichment, as well as teen, men, and women's retreats. My seminary training, my pastoral care classes, CPE training were paramount in providing care and support, as well as the ability to properly supervise a large number of civilian volunteers and the other chaplains and enlisted members of my staff. One chaplain and a small team of civilian volunteers went out on each retreat. On average, the center performed 3 to 4 retreats a month. Yeah. Near the end of my tour, I received word that my next set of orders would be to one of the larger ships on the same base, the USS Nassau, LHA-4. And prior to leaving CREDO, I was selected to the rank of commander. And I reported to my new ship in July of 1996. And as the ship's chaplain, I was responsible for the pastoral care of over 1,100 officers and sailors. When the Marine detachment came on aboard, the Marine Air Squadron, the landing craft crews, all our complement grew to almost 3,000 personnel. And the Marines would report with maybe 1 or 2 chaplains. These were Navy chaplains serving with a Marine Corps unit. And aboard the Nassau, I deployed on many exercises, with the longest time being our deployment to the Mediterranean Sea, back there again, from November of 96 to May of 97. And during that deployment, we engaged in the evacuation of American civilians from Albania during its civil unrest. We then left Albania and steamed to Western Africa for a similar evacuation. Those operations were off the coast of what was then the country of Zaire, now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. At the completion of our 6-month deployment, we returned to the States. And after dropping off the Marines and contingent in Morehead City, North Carolina, family and friends were invited to join the ship for its overnight trip from Morehead City to our home base in Norfolk, Virginia. We call that a Tiger Cruise. Both my sons, Charles and Robert, were able to make the trip. Being united with your family after 6 months away is always a joyous occasion. Now, I departed to Nassau during the summer of '97 and served for several months at the Naval Air Force Atlantic Air Lamp, located at the Naval Air Station in Norfolk, Virginia. That was just for a few months in the summer, because immediately after my brief time of Air Lamp, I reported to Navy Education and Training Center in Newport, Rhode Island, for a senior chaplain's leadership course. This was the same place where I received my basic training. Upon graduating from this course, I then reported to U.S. Coast Guard, Atlantic Area, and 5th Coast Guard District. Now, I was there to serve as a senior chaplain for 17 chaplains. Located in Portsmouth, Virginia, the Coast Guard's Atlantic Area headquarters encompassed operations from the Rocky Mountains to the Arabian Gulf across 5 Coast Guard districts in 40 states. Now, the next 4 years would change my life forever. As the senior chaplain for the Coast Guard Atlantic Area, I was involved with several major recovery operations. And although I was not in the area for the John F. Kennedy Jr. plane crash near Martha's Vineyard in July of '99, I remotely supervised the chaplains who were directly involved with the family and with the crew members during the recovery operations. And I was, however, at the center of operations for the Egypt Air 990 disaster. This aircraft crashed off the coast of Nantucket, losing all 217 passengers and crew aboard. Our ministry was directed mainly to the family members who arrived from Egypt and other countries, but we also cared for the military members, Red Cross volunteers, and other supporting agencies involved with recovery operations. However, I have to say my most memorable experience in my military career was being directly involved in the September 11, 2001 disaster of the World Trade Center in New York City. I was actually waiting for a connecting flight out of LaGuardia Airport on the morning of September 11, 2001, when both planes struck the towers, and I got to see them personally. Instead of continuing on to my assignment at Cape Cod, I was ordered to immediately set up and lead a chaplain's emergency response team in New York City. Because this was a civilian disaster, Department of Defense military personnel could not enter into the perimeter of Ground Zero. However, the Coast Guard and its personnel were not part of the Department of Defense. So they were actually invited by the governor of New York to provide port security and assistance. And as Navy chaplains serving with the Coast Guard, we were able to enter Ground Zero to provide our ministry and pastoral care. The FBI was in charge of the operations and required everyone to have proper security to move about the area. That meant wearing a specific badge to enter certain areas in and around Ground Zero. We were eventually able to wear one badge with specific stickers representing the areas we could enter, and the chaplains had all the stickers because we went everywhere. This experience changed my life forever. All of my seminary and CPE training, my hospital experiences, my time on the Nassau and all the other ships, Credo and all of my other civilian and military personal pastoral experiences, all of it came together for what I needed to do to care for our team of chaplains, for what I needed to do as far as providing them and when they were tasked to provide pastoral care and support in and around Ground Zero. So for over 6 weeks, a total of 30 active and reserve Navy chaplains provided direct pastoral care and support to firefighters, police, morgue personnel, recovery workers, but most importantly, to the surviving family members of the victims. I collaborated with the Red Cross and Salvation Army to organize and combine efforts for those working at the disaster site. And a team of 6 to 8 chaplains worked throughout the 6 weeks in and around Ground Zero, aboard Coast Guard ships and at the Family Center, at the disaster mortuary, and on the Coast Guard base that was on Staten Island. The base served as our headquarters and berthing area. And as the supervising chaplain, I had to remain there for the entire 6 weeks, with 2 brief breaks during that period. Time does not allow me to provide the full details for all that we accomplished, but know that the impact from the ministry of this team of chaplains was deeply appreciated by the firefighters, NYPD, and the surviving family members. Now, I required every chaplain on the team to debrief each night before we went to dinner together. I made sure that the various areas were served by 2 chaplains at a time and that the areas rotated among the entire team. because I felt that the area rotations along with the nightly debriefings helped prevent the chaplains from becoming too stressed or possibly develop any form of secondary trauma issues. And this care for the chaplains was the basis for my D.Min thesis. The title of my dissertation was longer than the content. Discovering the effect of directed self-care on the resiliency of a select group of Navy chaplains serving at Ground Zero following the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City. That's what my professor came up with. So not long after returning from there, I was informed that I'd been selected for the rank of captain, and this led to my second consecutive Coast Guard assignment at the Coast Guard headquarters in D.C. from May of 2002 to July of 2006. And the incoming commandant chose me to be the 7th chaplain of the U.S. Coast Guard. I was responsible for supervising 49 active and reserve Navy chaplains serving with Coast Guard billets within the United States, Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. And while in this position, I deployed several chaplains to provide ministry for Hurricane Katrina and other disasters. And serving with them also afforded me the opportunity to meet with some very interesting people, and even to pray with them. Now, following this assignment, I remained in D.C. to serve as a chaplain in Navy Medicine at the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. There I supervised and supported chaplains and religious program specialists assigned to medical hospitals around the country, United States of Japan, Okinawa, Hawaii, Guam, and in Italy. I departed D.C. for my final command at Navy Expeditionary Combat Command. That's in Joint Base Little Creek, Fort Story, and Virginia Beach. There I also provided leadership for all the religious program specialists, the chaplains, and NECC units, which are all around the world, which includes the Seabees. I retired on March 31st, 2012. Now, during my military service and since my retirement, I've remained faithful to the church. Been a commissioner to General Assembly, and been on PIVA's COM many times, and with my sister Lou Ventura here, we served on COM, been PIVA moderator, vice moderator, council moderator, all of that. But I was pastor of this church. As soon as I retired, I held my retirement ceremony at the Navy and reported the next day to the church. This is a Community Presbyterian Church in Portsmouth, Virginia. So with that, I'm just saying, I feel very blessed. God has blessed me with a loving and supportive family, afforded me with great ministry opportunities with the Navy, serving in various pastorates, working at all levels of church, but it all began right here at PTS. And I'm grateful for the theological education that began my journey, and I'm grateful to share with you today the fruits of the seminary's labors in providing me with my theological grounding and for preparing me to minister in all parts of the world under some of the most challenging of situations. Had show and tell, I just wanted, this is a book called From Sea to Sea Stories by U.S. Navy chaplains of African-American descent. There's a bunch of stories in here covering several generations of stories, just a couple pages each of chaplains. I'm on page 139. But just to say that, I do not get a penny from this book, but you can get it on Amazon. So with that said, thank you all and God bless you.